Okay, we're going to continue. Siman Tzadik Ches, Sif Ches. We're going to go into the Ramah. Sif Ches began with the din of Kechal, the udders of the animal, the cow, that is misbatil in Tisha B'Chamishim 59. We said it's at the Rabbanon. It's different because it's really mutter, and that's why they made a hecker in a sense that it should be dealt with differently. It in itself remains usher, even though the plita is what we were concerned with. The kachal, if it was cooked in the wrong way, prepared in the wrong way, will remain usher. There is a proper way to cook it or to roast it, and then everything would be okay. That's where we left off. Instead of going on to Sif Test, which possibly other shiurim would do, including the notes, I'm going to focus a lot on the Ramah. The Ramah is going to talk about a very interesting situation. He makes various points, but one of the points that he makes is about David, or I should say Milso Davido Letamo. But before we get to the concept of Milso Davido Letamo, perhaps we should read it inside. The Ramah says as follows: Kol ha'isurim hanoagim b'zman hazeh, all the forbidden isurim that apply today, kulam isbatim b'shishim, they are all for the most part nullified in 60, as we know. Milvad, there are certain things that require more than 60, which he doesn't mention, but the other commentaries do. And we know them from the introduction to Hilchos Taaruvot. They include Orla, Kilei Kerem. And why would he not mention Orla? Because, he's concerned about perhaps here isurim that are very unique, that are not at all batal. So that's why he says, Milvad, chometz b'Pesach, chometz on Pesach, yain nesech, the real yain nesech, which I'll explain later on, forbidden wine, non-kosher wine, kasher yizbar b'lchosehim, that they are not batal at all. They're also b'mashu. Whereas Truma, Orla, and all there's other isurim that may require more than 60, may require 100 and 200, as we have already discussed in the past. Kasher yizbar b'lchosehim, as these isurim are separately covered elsewhere, whether it's in Pesach or in Yain Nesach, which is in Chelik base of Yore Deah. So, ubilvad sha'isur eino noisen tam begdera. As long as the isur that we're talking about, that usually would be ordinarily bottled in 60, is not a strong giver of taste, of flavor. If it really gives a lot of flavor, more than the average, an important condition, and this isur is isur by itself, the flavoring is the isur, okay? The tavlin, the spice itself is asur.
Not like salt, it's used meat.
As opposed to, I have salt. Salt is going to be very flavoring, but the salt is not the problem here. It's what's inside the salt that's causing the problem. Blood.
Salt has...
Yeah, something that is usher other than the salt.
I thought Isser Atzmo, when it does smell like Caleb, it has to be, right?
Right.
Atzmo is like...
Isser Atzmo is versus
Is this not Isser...
Isser Balua.
So what is this? Is this Isser Mitzvah and Atzmo? Is that Isser Atzmo?
Yeah. Yes, Isser Atzmo means versus Isser Balua. Meaning I have here a spice, a tam, something that's going to give flavor, that in itself is usher.
Spice is not in itself usher.
It may be.
Well,
It may be for some
if
reason.
it gets from something that's usher, then, but it
No,
in
that would be the
itself
other case.
is not
That's
usher.
Right. No, for some reason, this very spicy ingredient is usher.
Like what would...
An example, something that is a very spicy treif ingredient. I mean, the spice itself, and we're going to talk about it.
Okay,
we're going to give various examples
I just try to think from Isser Atzmo.
We'll talk about it when we get to medication, which I'm going to speak about too.
Okay.
A very important area too,
Is
medication.
there a distinction between that and Isser Atzmo, or is it
It's the combination of whatever. Doesn't have to be just the spice, as we will see with medication. It's the flavoring here that's causing the problem. That is the isser, as opposed to the spicy ingredient is not usser at all. The one that's giving the flavor has no isser whatsoever in it, but it has absorbed an isser that is not flavored. something what we would call in medicines an inactive ingredient, perhaps, in this case, because the salt is much more active, and there happens to be something in the salt that is usr, but it's an inactive ingredient. It's an isur balua. That's all. So that's all it is. It's either isur balua or it's an isur mitam atzmoi. So the Ramah makes this very important distinction that as long as we're not talking about a tam, an isur that gives tam, that is intended actually to give tam, it is known to give tam, and who also mitzad atzmoi. That's an important condition, that it in itself is usr. Then the halacha is, everybody agrees with this, afilu be'elef lo botel. It's not botel even 1,000, but he adds something very interesting, that unless you learn the shach, I believe, you may just run through it without realizing what he's saying. Even though he says mitzad atzmo afilu be'elef lo botel, he says kol zman shemargishin tamoy.
Right.
Well, you just said even 1,000.
It provided in 1,000.
Can you translate what you said?
You know, it's usually by itself. What that usually means is afilu be'elef lo botel. By itself,
Means there will never be any amount.
there will never be an amount. There will never be any amount.
Like a starter.
It's almost like an isur b'mashahu.
Yeah, right. Like a
Right.
starter, something like that.
Like a what?
A mimid. It's
Oh,
tray.
oh. There are certain things that we will see later on, whether it's a davar amaimed, roiles kabed, dover sheish lo matirin. There are various situations where they're just not bottle. This is not one of them. As we will emphasize later on, this is not one of them. Even though it appears to be initially.
In 1,000 it won't be bottled, but in 1,001 it might be.
It may be. So the Ramah says, even though it's not clear, and I think the Shach is the one that clarifies it here, but he does say, Kozman she margishin tamoy. All right, fine. It does help, as long as we feel the flavor. Melachein, melach betavlin. Salt is an example, or other spices, and there could be quite a few of them. Midvorm da'avida letama. These are things that are known to be, that are used in cooking to give flavor. Im asurim machmas asman, if they on their own are usr because of an isr in them, those intrinsically usr. Enam betenam b'shishim. Then the standard conventional bitul of shishim does not apply to that. That's the Ramah. The Ramah says here we have an exception. Not only yain nesach, not only chometz. There are other things that require more. And one of those things is a milsa davida letama, something that gives flavor. Something that gives flavor, well, what's the problem? The problem is, shishim usually takes care of ordinary flavors. But here I have something that the flavor is going to stick around. Shishim will not be enough. So in other words, I'm letting you know in advance, there are things that are so powerful in their flavor that shishim just doesn't do it. So shishim doesn't apply. And when I say shishim doesn't apply, never, supposedly, does shishim apply. Why?
Usually,
Shishim never applies. In a milsa davida letama, like salt, I can assure you, that's what the Ramah is saying, that shishim will never apply. How much can I still be mevatalet? Is there a hechet timsa? Is there a scenario where I may still be able to be mevatalet? Well, he did add the words, kozma shemagishin tamoy. So maybe at some point, if I don't feel any flavor, if there is such a point, it'll be mutter. But since he doesn't get into too much more detail, the Shach does a little bit, then we have to assume that this is going to be much more of a complicated taaruvos than an ordinary one, because it's just good chance that it's not bottle.
Shall we go, or are we going back to the chef?
No, we haven't gotten to a chef yet. Right. We haven't gotten to a chef yet right now. Somehow,
would be able
he said you would for sure, having spices, certain spices are very, very strong, salt being one of them.
But implying that if you got more than 1,000, then maybe you would.
Right.
So let's say it's 5,000.
Right.
And is he talking about the average person takes? Or is he talking about the chef?
Anybody, because let's assume you didn't know, and how did you find out that there's somehow you taste it? Oh no, there's this salt, there's this non-kosher salt in here. That means you tasted it, right? or somehow it came to your awareness. But there may be a possibility that it would become mutter. Now, so before we go on to that stage, we need to understand this whole idea of milsa david latamo. Is it an isur deraisa, or is it an isur derabanan? The isur veheter says it's an isur derabanan. Why? We have to understand why. He says bitul is b'shishim. That's the shir that we have. But you have tam. He says that tam is like the tam that we've covered before, tam kolush. Remember that idea, that concept, that shita that holds that if you have still tam after shishim, without spices, an isur tam after shishim, somehow it's a tam kolush. Therefore, that's not tam ki'ikar. Tam ki'ikar that we hold is also, even according to the ones who hold mitzvah Torah, Rabbinical tam, right? Even according to the ones who hold tam ki'ikar is asur. But if it's beyond 60, there's no tam ki'ikar. Why? It's a tam kolush. Whatever you're tasting, it's not a real tam.
In Basar b'chalach, we also accounted differently. So there we said tam kalush by not barnat. And by not barnat, we said not barnat does not apply to isur.
Right.
Because once it became an isur, it doesn't help you that weaker. It always remains.
Yeah.
Whereas by chalav, which is a heter,
Right.
so there not barnat will weak of the chalav or the meat.
By not barnat, we don't apply that heter of not barnat
to isur.
to isurim.
But not because of tam kalush.
Not because of tam kolush.
Other circumstances, you can have
Right.
tam kalush by isur as well.
Exactly. If it's a tam kolush, it's a tam kolush. That's what we're saying. That concept of tam kolush we covered when we spoke about tam ki'ikar. Beyond 60, even if you feel a taste, it's kolush. It's weak. It's not. And what does weak mean? It's not tam ki'ikar. So the Isur Veheter says anything beyond 60 does not fall into the category of tam ki'ikar.
Right.
Therefore it's a derabanan.
So it's tam ki'ikar, the rabbanan.
All right. Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Very good point. In other words, it's asur. It's a tam ki'ikar derabanan, like you said. Yes. It's the tam is asur. Right. Yeah.
It's still
Yeah.
isur.
Yeah, because what is essentially happening, the real isur is bottle. It's gone. The real thing is really gone. I feel something. It's a derabanan. The Pri Chodesh says no. The whole idea of tam ki'ikar is I can taste the tam. I don't care if the isur is really dissipated. What's tam ki'ikar according to the Pri Chodesh? Tam ki'ikar means as long as I feel the tam of an isur, the product is asur. So therefore, if that's the case, if that's pshat in tam ki'ikar, that as long as there's tam, then this is an isur d'oraisa according to the Pri Chodesh. What is that?
Even if you we say that.
No, not according to the Pri Chodesh. There are those that don't agree with tam kolush. No, there are those that hold that as long as there's tam, it's asur. There are those, yeah. Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, both hold it's asur. The machloekes is the rabbanan
or the raisa, yeah. There are those who hold as long as there's tam. That's the idea of tam ki'ikar. What's tam? I have a flavor of the isur here. Either it's beyond shishim, but I still have it.
So right now we have two opinions.
So why do I use shishim? Because ordinarily shishim tells me that it's gone. But what if I sneaked up after it was bottled and I tasted it and I felt it? I would have to throw it away or give it to a goy. In other words, after it was bottled, because I assume most Yisurim are bottled b'shishim, I taste and I still find it, I would have to throw it away according to the shitas that hold that tam is still asur.
So we have the shita that tam is still asur d'oraisa, and
not necessarily. Just the Pri Chodesh at least holds in the case of milsa david letamo. Yeah, milsa david letamo.
So that's a special category of. That you wouldn't say that same the Oraisa Isser on something.
He would. He apparently would because it makes no difference.
He doesn't make a distinction.
I don't think so. It doesn't make a distinction because he just says this is the idea of tam ki'ikar. But I don't think everybody agrees with him on that.
So in the it will say as long as you feel the taste, I don't care 60, 100, 200.
Right. That's tam. That's the tam ki'ikar. Right. That's the isser. The isser is a tam.
We said the isser the heter, that isser be the rabbanan.
Right.
And then there are opinions that there is no isser at all once it goes over 60.
Yes. Exactly. There are those
so
shitas.
It's a three-way machloikus.
Well, in some ways you could say so. Yeah, because here, according to the way the Isur Veheter would explain, this is a special rule that applies to milsa david letama only. 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 That the Rabbanan made a special exception. Otherwise, everywhere else, the Isser would be so diluted that it doesn't represent an Isser. But here, if to start with, it's such a powerful Tam, the Rabbanan said it's Asr. Okay, so it's really not three ways, but the three categories, maybe.
No, three ways in as much as there are those who say there is no Isser, once it's over 60. There are those who say in this particular category, the Rabbanan, there is Isser. And the third is in this part, and the third opinion is whenever it's still tasted, it's a deraisa Isser.
Yes.
That would be the
Yes.
Chadash.
Yes, definitely. What would be a nafkamina between the Isser V'Heter and the Pri Chodosh? Besides the obvious suffix the Rabbanan and suffix the Raisa, besides that, a nafkamina would be if you have 60, you have 60. Can you at least now give it to a kafela to taste? According to the Isser V'Heter, since this is only an Isser D'Rabbanan, and you have 60, even the Ramah would agree that you can give it to a kafela. Whereas according to the Pri Chodosh, Lechara, since this is a real Isser D'Raisa, the Ramah would not want to use a kafela.
You say the Pri Chodosh is interpreting, that's what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying the Pri Chodosh, no.
Pri Chodosh himself would say.
What we're saying as a possible nafkamina between the Isser V'Heter and the Pri Chodosh would be, can I allow a kafela to taste it?
And
once there's 60, remember.
And still conform with the Ramah.
And still conform with the Ramah who says we don't use kafela.
So if I hold like it's a veheter, I would say sure I can let the kafela taste.
It's only an Isser because I have 60. Only because I have 60.
Because I have 60, I'm not violating the Ramah. If I hold like Pri Chodosh, I would have to say even if I have 60, I can't let it.
Exactly, because it's a suffix. It's an Isser D'Oraisa. Yeah, that would be a nafkamina, perhaps, possibly, between the two of them. Now, the Taz goes into a whole different area. Since we're talking about Tam, the Taz has a little bit of a difficulty. He says, wait a minute, just spices? I can think of, the Taz says, of all kinds of ingredients that really contribute flavoring. There are sweeteners. There's all kinds of, and even Shuman itself, fat, gives flavor, it enhances, it does something to the dish. And the Taz basically says, and that's the way it's really understood by all the poskim, including food that is manufactured today. This is one of the isurim that they have to consider. If there is an ingredient that is a milsa da'avida letama,
What is the translation of that exactly?
Milsa means something, milsa, davar, in Aramaic, that is intended to be used to contribute flavor. It happens to be noticeable whenever you put it in the food.
Otherwise, it wouldn't contribute.
You're saying like salt.
So it's something you're
Flavoring.
So it's something you're putting in with the flavor.
With the intent to not only to flavor, but to actually feel. Remember the difference, because we will talk about it if we get to it. Hopefully, we will, to wine. Okay.
By definition.
What this will do is not only flavor the dish, but other things flavor the dish. And as the Gemara points out, all the things that we figure to shishim, we figure it based on onions and leeks. The Gemara in Chulin Tzadik Zayin Omid Beis.
It's very strong flavor.
Which, by the way, based on the Gemara, we know that an onion, as sharp as it is, it's not milsa davida letamo like the salt is. Which is interesting, because onions are pretty strong.
Right.
So the Gemara says, our basis of bitul b'shishim is based on things like onions and leeks. No, it didn't say salt. It says batzol v'kapluto, which is leeks. So in other words, our basis for bitul b'shishim is when you compare it to these things. So, based on those things, even though they give flavor, up to that point. So there are things that are much more powerful than onions and leeks. And that's what the Ramah is talking about over here. So, based on what we just said, the Taz says, wait a minute, there are other things that contribute to the flavoring of the dish as well.
Now, when we're talking about these things, I just realized something. When we're talking about these things, we're talking, of course, about cooking.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the things just lying next to each other. We're talking about cooking.
Yeah.
When you cook onions, they lose their spiciness. They're not as sharp. When they're raw, they're very sharp.
That's a good point.
So
maybe that's why.
When they're
maybe
cooked.
that's why with onions it doesn't really retain that much strength.
When they're cooked, it's 6 dishes.
That's why when you're making challah, you have to make sure you put enough onions. Otherwise, you're not going to feel it. Yeah. Anyway, based on what the Taz goes through, I'm just going to make it short. he has a good point. There are other ingredients that contribute to the flavoring of a dish, but there's a difference. Those things like shuman or anything else, oils of all kinds of things, even though they contribute to the flavoring, to the seasoning, to the whatever it is, you don't actually feel them, you feel something. And this is an important distinction because, as I said before, it will make a difference in yain too, in wines. I'm not feeling and in medication and in other things too, I'm not feeling the davar or the milsa david al-atama here. The dish itself has become sweeter, has become tastier as a result of all kinds of ingredients, but those ingredients are not felt. You cannot single them out.
You can't distinguish them.
Right, and they're mixed with other things, so go tell which one is which. Could you tell that there is basil, there is turmeric? Each one does.
But you can.
Well, it depends how much.
That's when they're wrong.
No, even when it's cooked, you could tell somewhat, but up to 60, maybe.
I know.
Not
You
beyond.
can tell the onion.
Oh yes, you could. Yes, you.
cannot
I can
tell
tell the
individual
leek.
spices.
I like the leeks in soup. It's very good. Yeah, it is. It's a very good.
But individual spices, you don't necessarily tell them in.
No, especially pepper. Sometimes pepper. Somehow, I think I like your idea about some spices when they're cooked, they really lose their strength. Try putting pepper raw, and you'll feel it, even a little bit of it. Cook it, it's just somehow it's gone. So obviously, cooking something does lose its intensity. So what you have here, based on what the task question is, yes, of course, you have all kinds of ingredients that contribute to flavor, but you're not feeling the tam itself. You're feeling the overall impact, the impact that the flavors have had in the dish. But can you identify or single them out? No. So they're not things that are vida letamo. Now, let's say you do have an isur balua. Let's say you do have an isur balua. You have salt, and the salt is not the isur problem. The isur problem is the balua. Okay? Then we said it's not a problem, right? Because it's an isur balua. It's not an isur mitam atzmoy, right? You don't need it's not going to be a problem in 1,000 because it's an isur balua.
Well, you're saying it's not atzmoy?
Right. Let's say
So what would be the example with salt?
Salt that has blood. The salt that came off the chicken, it still has blood.
It was used to salt them.
Yeah. So the salt is salt. Yeah, but the salt is not the isur. It's the blood. It's the isur balua.
It absorbed blood.
Then even though I can get away with it, and I won't have a problem because, the salt is not the isur, it will be batul b'shishim like any isur. Still, for those who hold chanan b'shar isurim, I have to figure out against the entire salt and not just the blood.
And so by Hanan, you also say tam?
No.
Because the reason we did more, you need 60 against the whole salt. Not only
That's
against
all.
the blood.
That's all.
But you don't need to have.
In other words, don't forget the point of Hanan, but it has nothing to do with the tam
With
here.
the tam.
Nothing to do with the tam.
So
It's just
I can still feel the salt after 60, and
Right.
the salt that I'm feeling is Hanan salt,
right.
but I don't need to worry about it.
Still, yeah. All I need is 60 against the salt. I don't need more than that because for those who hold Hanan b'shar isurim, right?
So, but when the Rama says salt and strong tasting spices that are 60, salt itself is not. So how does salt become isur atzmo? If it's isur balua, then how does the salt ever become? Or spices.
Salt.
Spice pepper never becomes pepper in itself. Is not. It has to take taste from some isur to become. But then it's not an isur atzmo like the Rama thing.
Yeah. Well, we're having a difficult time thinking of a scenario where the salt itself would be isur mitam atzu, but there can be situations where the ingredient, not salt, is a treif ingredient that gives flavor.
Blood is the ingredient. I
What
don't.
is that?
It's okay, but I don't quite get what. I understand what you with the blood and the salt, but
Right.
I see why it's completely parv, like a salt or a spice. How that could become isur atzma,
Yeah.
like chalif.
Right.
It has to take something from something else in order to become.
Yeah. There are such ingredients that can give flavor, not necessarily salt.
But Rama says salt.
The Rama gives
Right.
two. Wait a second. The Rama gives two conditions. One condition is the taste continues to be noticeable, distinguished. The distinct taste is noticeable. That's one condition. And the second condition is, and it's something that's aser mitam atzmo. Two conditions. Okay. One condition is the taste continues to be noticeable after 6, Second condition, it's aser mitam atzmo. Salt he's using as an example for something whose taste continues to be noticeable. He's not using salt as an example for the second condition, that something is aser mitam atzmo. He's not using salt for that condition.
No, but he's still...
He's using salt for the condition, something
Yeah, yeah.
that is the taste is noticeable.
But if you read it... No,
Yeah.
but Ilan, if you do read it,
No.
he's right.
No,
Because-
no, he's not.
No, because Lachein melach betavle midvorim davida letama.
Davida letama.
Right.
So
If they...
Im asurim
Im asurim
yatzmo.
mitam.
If they, now that's the second
Right.
condition.
Right.
Im asurim yatzmo.
Right, well, obviously, but...
So something whose taste continues to be noticeable, if it, like a salt, if the taste is noticeable, if it's something that's aser miyatzmo, then mitam atzmo, then.
You're right, but this, in other words,
So
with
the
salt...
salt is, no. Look at it carefully.
Yeah.
The salt is a characterization of a lingering taste.
Yes.
The salt is not a characterization of something
Not
that is
necessarily,
aser
right.
mitam
Not
atzmo.
necessarily, that's true. Not necessarily. But there are certain things that are also because of the way they're made,
Right.
okay? And we'll talk about when we talk about medication soon. And they're also mitam atzmam. There's some ingredient there that has rendered the whole thing usher. Now, the simple scenario where salt or any spice is also mitam atzmoi, even salt, anything, is how? Since you asked the question, what's the simple way where you can even have anything also mitam atzmoi?
That's what you said, Hanan.
Oh,
No.
No, that would be Badua.
Yeah, in this case it would be balua. In this example, is any time an isser was mixed with heter and it's not bottle, and the heter becomes isser. Simple.
Wait a second.
No longer isser balua.
Wait a second. But it is salt-absorbed blood.
Right.
And there is 60 salt against the blood. Then the blood was misbottled in the... I don't need
But
60
there
against
was
the blood
not
or the
60?
salt. I already have 60 against the blood or in the salt itself.
The salt.
So the only case that I would have...
No, you're right. But that's when you're trying to say that there's more salt than blood. Okay, but my example of Isser Balua is still shayach in a case where the blood is bottled in the salt because I have salt. In other words, the concept that we want to get across over here is that only when the salt is also mitam atzmoi.
Yeah.
Not when it has an Isser Balua. Why? Right. Because the Isser Balua cannot go further than it can go on its own. Right? That we understand? Right. The Isser Balua cannot go now further than what it can go on its own.
In other words, the Isser Balua cannot usher the salt beyond what the Isser Balua itself can usher. The Isser Balua cannot usher the potato.
No. The salt itself cannot usher the dish more than what the Isser Balua can usher on its own.
Right.
Why should it?
Right. So how is it different now?
No, all I was saying is that it can be that the blood or any blia is bottled in the salt. Okay. So I don't have a Hanan problem.
So because I have 60 in the salt against it.
Right.
So I already.
But I would think, that because we're talking about salt, and salt is an aviletama, then I have an Isser in the salt, and now, boom, the whole thing becomes also even in 500. The answer is no, it's an Isser Balua.
Right.
It's not an Isser Mitam, that's all. But you're right.
So you confused me.
You're right. But because it's bottled in the salt, there would be no Hanan.
You're right.
Right.
But if it was not bottled in the salt,
According to those who the Hanan, the
Shara, yes. And then you need 60 against the whole salt.
against the whole salt.
Sure, that's always true. So when do you have, in a simple situation, a Isser Mitam Atzmoi, whenever that spice happens to have Isser mixtures in it, and those Isser mixtures are not bottled in it. That's all.
So if your salt becomes Hanan, you're saying you do need to get rid of the salt taste altogether. 60 against the salt will not be enough. Is that what you're saying now?
No.
I thought I asked that.
No. Whenever you have a Hanan situation, you always need, for those who hold Hanan, 60 against the salt.
60 will be sufficient even if you can still taste
But this, because it's an Isser Balua here, I'm not going to need 1,000 or 1,200.
But am I going to need enough to taste the top of the salt?
The taste or the
If
quantity?
the salt is not, listen for a moment, if the blood went in the salt, I do not have shishim.
Yeah, I think I wasn't clear myself in that. What? Yeah.
The blood goes into the salt, and you do not have shishim with the salt. So it's not bottled, and the salt is now Hanan. The Hanan now falls in something else, mixture,
Right.
which was not. I need at least, but now do I need enough so I don't taste the salt? Is that?
Does anyone
what
hold
the
to
Ramah
answer
said?
this question? One condition.
Right.
Does anyone hold the Hanan of the salt is Hanan d'oraisa? Because I remember we said the Shach said it in Basar B'chalav that he says that the Ramaz who holds that there is Hanan b'shar Isurim, that's only the Rabbanan.
Okay.
So do we actually hold like that, like the Shach says?
As far as what?
As far as the Hanan b'shar Isurim is the Rabbanan and not the Oraisa?
Where?
Because if it's the Rabbanan, why should I need more than I'm dealing with
Like
the
it's
Rabbanan?
the taste of salt. That's my question.
Well, again, we're talking about an Isur D'Oraisa, the blood, right?
Right, but
If
when
it
they
actually-
call the salt Hanan.
Actually, it's an Isur D'Rabbanan. In most cases, the
You're
blood
right.
would be an
But
Isur
we want to call the
D'Rabbanan.
salt now a Hanan.
Right,
So the question is, this is a Hanan b'shar Isurim.
right.
I recall that when the Ramah said in Basar B'chalav that there
Right.
is such a thing as Hanan b'shar Isurim,
Right.
the Shach said what the Ramah mean here is a Hanan d'Rabbanan. So I'm not sure.
One more time.
When the Ramah says there is such a thing as Hanan b'shar Isurim, which the Mechaber doesn't hold like that. Mechaber holds there's Hanan b'Basar B'chalav.
Yeah, Hanan B'Shar Yisurim we say is with the Rabbanan.
It's with the Rabbanan.
The Hanan, the concept, right?
Right. So if this,
The
so if this
Chaver
salt
says
is a
there is no
d'Rabbanan-
Hanan at all,
So if this salt is Hanan d'Rabbanan,
right?
but Hanan by Basar B'chalav is still rice, no?
Right.
So if this is Hanan d'Rabbanan by the salt, do I still have the Chumrah in that case of what the Ramah is saying here?
No, then you would not, because I think there's some of the poskim hold that you wouldn't say Hanan on an Isur D'Rabbanan.
And the blood is in Isur d'Rabbanan.
Right, right.
So you don't even have Hanan.
You wouldn't even have Hanan.
But if you did have a
If you
Hanan
did have it in an Isur D'Oraisa as an
No, no.
Isur Balua,
Yeah.
You
Then
had
it's
in the
D'Oraisa.
salt,
You had a trace.
How can
a
you-
treif, something treif.
That happened.
You
Pig,
had
pig fat,
blood.
chalev.
But then the
Pig
salt, but then the salt is a Hanan d'Rabbanan, we're saying.
The whole is the Hanan. Yes, Hanan will be the Rabbanan anyway.
And if it's a Hanan d'Rabbanan, do I still need more than 6 to be mevatel the taste?
No.
No. Okay, that was my
I'm
question.
trying to, that's what
Right.
I'm trying to figure out an example, how the salt could get to ever be that you would need 6
Yeah, I would.
on your question.
Yeah, we still need to look into that. I still need to look into that, how that would work.
I propose
Right.
again.
Right.
The Ramah is bringing the salt
Right.
as an example for something whose taste is lasting, and there's not mevatel in 6. And it's not an example for something that's an isbifnei atzmo. These are two
Yeah,
distinct conditions.
because we
of the salt.
do know one thing. We do know one thing, and we've covered this before. Especially, I think it's according to the Rush, that in the same way that a isur becomes heter through bitul, a heter becomes isur through the other way, the opposite bitul. Okay, according to some opinions in the Rush. So if that's the case, then you could have certain things that were not misbatel becoming an isur mitam atzmam. Now, in the same way that Hanan works, you may call it midrabanan or whatever, in the same way that Hanan works, that this entire piece right now is a problem, right? In some ways, it's an isur mitam atzmo now. Because as we will see later on in Hilchos Taaruvot, when you figure out shishim, right? You figure out against the whole piece. If there's an Isur Balua, you don't figure out against the whole. What is Hanan b'shar Yisurim? You figure out a shishim against the entire piece, even though you know how much the Isur Balua is. That's Hanan, right? Yeah, and you don't say Efshel L'Soichtoi. That's the side.
But
Right.
does the Ramah hold
Even
like
if it's
that?
not Hanan, even if it's not Hanan, even the Mechaber would hold it on taste.
Yeah, that's that's something else with onion. Yes, that's in Basar B'chalav situations.
But
Yeah.
does the Ramah hold that it's actually Isser becomes a heter, or does the Ramah hold like those who say that it's statistically we go after the roiv, but it's not that the actually Isser transformed its soul and became a heter.
Yeah.
Does the Ramah hold like the Rosh? Do you happen to hold?
No, I don't think yes.
In which
I
case
don't
we still
recall.
need an explanation for
Yeah.
the Ramah and the Rosh.
Yeah, we still need to figure this out as far as Hanan, because this is something that I saw brought down, that whenever there's Hanan, obviously you would have to figure 60 against the whole thing, not against just the Isur Balua. But the problem is, once you have an Isur Balua, which is not Misbatel, then it becomes an Isur Mitam Atzmo at some point too. So we have to,
Even without Hanan.
whether you say Hanan or not. Right, whether you say Hanan or not.
That's what I was thinking going on.
Right.
I was thinking there's some
Yeah.
new thing going on here.
Right. So that's something that we need
That's
to
what I
look
was
at.
thinking.
We need to look into that. But let's go on. Okay, we need to look into that.
If I say, if it is a young person like a girl,
Right.
and it is a male, did I just contradict myself? If I say, if it's a 13-year-old person like your daughter,
Right.
I have a daughter. I say, like your
Yes.
daughter, and it's a male, then it follows he'll have bar mitzvah. Did I just contradict myself?
Yes, you did.
No, I said a 13-year-old person like your daughter, she's a 13-year-old person.
Oh, like.
And a second condition,
Right.
if it's a male.
Okay, yeah.
So you can't tell me, but you said a daughter is not a male. It's a 13-year-old daughter as an example for a young person.
Right, yeah.
And I'm adding a second condition. It's a male. Then he'll have bar mitzvah.
The
Yeah.
problem
Same
is we
thing
don't know
here.
whether there's a comma or a semicolon. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There are more than punctuation.
Right. All right. Anyway, the Shach goes on to explain. That something that gives Tom more than 60, ordinarily, or not Milsa David Latama, something that is giving Tom more than 60. Somehow we got to taste it. Then we know it's usher if it's felt. According to some, right? We said before, some say it's kolush. And the Shach says, he's of the opinion that if I can feel taste beyond 60, ordinary taste, not strong taste here, it's usher. Therefore, bistama, I assume that tavlinim, spices that give strong taste, will therefore always continue to give taste and not be misbatel. I have to assume that. In other words, in the same way that the Shach says, the same way that he holds, or that some hold, that if I can taste something beyond 60, it will remain aser. He doesn't hold tam kolush. I have to assume that those things that the Chachamim told me, that they give flavor, that they continue to give flavor, and therefore they're not bottle. I can make that assumption.
And I can tell you why we wouldn't know an example for such an example.
Yeah.
You know, usher. So how would we know the taste?
Well, obviously, that's the point.
Yeah.
I make that assumption that it's not bottle. Now, why is this important? Because if somehow I do know that it's bottle, this is where the Taz, I think, it brings down this scenario. If somehow I would know that it's bottle, like a big pot and this little bit of salt that went, well, the big pot, obviously, it won't be felt. And in a situation where the tam is not felt, everybody would agree that even though it's a milsa David latama, but because this is such a large pot, that this is an exception. In other words, what is this telling us? This point is telling us what the Ramah said in different words, that as long as I cannot taste it, which means that don't think that milsa David latama is like birya, or like a davar chashuv that is not bottle. It's only because we assume that it's not going to be bottle so easily. But if somehow you were to find out, or you see a situation where it's impossible that it gives flavor, like a Yore Deah, that's the lotion, a big pot, then it can be bottle because it's not something so special that it's not bottle. It's just that it's the chemistry. But if somehow you can prove that it's bottle, it's bottle. Okay? So again, so the Shach basically says that it's all it is an assumption. Because if in reality I would feel beyond 60, then we know it's us. So here I make that assumption. So therefore, in a situation where there is no such assumption, like it's a big pot, and in fact we realize that it's not felt, then obviously it would be mutter. It wouldn't, just because it was a spice, it wouldn't render the whole thing usher. So it's not. So that's what the Shach, that's what the Ramah is actually saying in different words too. As long as I know it gives taste, but if somehow I know it doesn't, then it will be
really
mutter.
probably on the presence of the spirit.
Right. Now, I want to add one more scenario. We spoke a little bit about Isur Balua versus an Isur Mitam Atzmai. Let's say you have a situation where it's an Isur Balua in a piece of meat. It's very, very salty. Salty piece of meat. Spicy piece of meat. What fell into this pot is not a spice with this usher. What fell into this pot is a piece of meat that is very, very spicy.
And what about the Isur?
The Isur is a spice.
Oh, the spice is the Isur.
Okay? In other words, this is not the example of salt having an Isur Balua. This is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Could you give an example?
Okay? This is not the salt example where the salt contains an Isur Balua and we say, don't look at the salt. It's an Isur Balua there. So forget the salt that is so spicy. I'm giving you the opposite example.
Right.
Where the piece of meat is not salty by itself, but it contains the Isur Balua, which is the spice.
In other words, the meat will be b'matel instead, but the salt which is usher that it contains will continue to be noticed.
I didn't get to bittul yet. One
Is that what
second.
you
No. One more time. So far we've seen the distinction between Isser Mitam Atzmo, that's clear. The spice itself is Asr. Versus if the Isser is not Mitam Atzmo. How? It's an Isser Balua. In other words, the salt, the spice, is not Asr. But it contains an Isser. So the halacha is, well, that's not what we had in mind. Even though we're talking about salt, the salt is not Asr here. It happens to have a problem. It happens to be Asr because of an Isser Balua in it. Follow me? But
Yeah.
that's the Isser Balua.
I really don't. I don't understand what a spice is.
An Isser
The
Bitam.
spices themselves are vegetables and they're parts.
No.
Why
All right.
can't you make spices from ants by crashing? I mean, I don't know if you can or not because
Yeah,
I never would have eaten such a thing because
There are some flavors. It doesn't have to be a spice. There are flavors
Oh, made from animals? Or
made from animals.
Oh, okay, fine.
Okay?
that are very pungent. No, I'm
Yeah.
talking about something
Yes,
that's pungent.
exactly.
Wouldn't
Pungent,
call it a spice.
acid,
It's a flavor, yeah.
very, very strong. An acid of form. Yeah. Okay?
Everything about flavor is not really a spice to me. On the spice wrap.
Yeah. But anyway, so do we understand so far the difference between?
Flavoring makes it a lot easier.
Do we understand the difference between Isur Mitam Atzmo and Isur Balua? Right? Even though it's in salt, but it's only in Isur Balua. The Isur Balua is blood. That doesn't count. That could be bottled in shishim. No problem. The scenario I want to mention is what happens if the Isur Balua
Is the spicy thing.
is the spicy thing. Okay, I have a piece of meat. I'm cooking goulash. All right, goulash. Meat, it's all meat. And then I said, well, I need some more meat. And I took a piece of meat that contains a forbidden treifa spice in it. It's a very, very pungent, very strong flavoring, teriyaki, or whatever it is. Something very, but teriyaki is usually okay. Something very, very powerful flavor in this piece of meat. And this piece of meat, I mixed with the rest of the meat. Now, so you understand how this is the opposite example of what we mentioned before? Here the Isser Balua is the spicy one, and the meat itself is not spicy by itself.
Right.
You all with me? Okay. Now, obviously, it's spicy. And it's spicy enough that it's probably going to make the whole stew spicy.
Yeah.
Let's assume. Okay? What I would like to suggest in this situation, the feeling is dieting, okay? It doesn't make that much of a difference, so much of a difference, because it's still spicy, and it's an Isser that is spicy, mitam atzmo. It just happens to be absorbed in a piece of meat.
Right.
But it's still very spicy. I want to suggest, however, that because it's an Isser Balua nevertheless, it is Balua, isn't it? That we will be able to rely on a kafela, even if you have less than 60. According to those who hold you cannot rely on a kafela less than 60.
That must be according to the Mechaber, of course, the Rabbi.
No, even according to those shitas that hold. There are shitas that hold like this. If you remember Siman Tzadik Gimel, okay, in Basar v'Cholov, there the situation is like this. You cooked in a fleishike pot, you cooked milk without realizing it. Right? You're not supposed to. There should be shabal basar lo yivashal b'cholav. V'im bishabal mesoifim leis leis, and within 24 hours you cooked in fleishike pot dairy, asur benoisen tam. And what does that mean? So the Shach says, nois tam means yatimeno kapela. Even though the Ramah says we never use a kapela, there are some shitas that here they will agree. Why? Not only the Mechaber, because even the Ramban, who holds that you can use a kafela when you have 60, and you cannot use a kafela when you have less than 60. That's only when it's an Isser Mitam Atzmoi that fell in. When it's an Isser Balua, like with the pot, he would be Mekel.
But I have a question.
To use a kafela under 60.
I have a question. We don't only have the taste, we have the substance, balua, the spice itself, its substance present in absorption.
Right.
In the case of the pot, the substance of the meat wasn't there. We always say the pot was cleaned properly.
Right.
It's only that the pot had absorbed a substance-less taste. So wouldn't you want to make the distinction a substanceless taste versus a taste that comes accompanied by the substance that originated that?
I'm not sure. This is what I wanted to suggest, because the Aruch HaShulchan brings in the Beis Yosef. This is Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef and the Aruch HaShulchan brings it down that when do the Shitas hold we don't use a kafelo under 60. They don't want to use a kafelo under 60. It's only lechumra. You have 60, then I use a kafelo then. So there are Shitas that hold you cannot use a kafelo under 60, but above 60 you can. Ramban. Yeah. So the Beis Yosef says, even those Shitas that say you cannot use a kafelo under 60, that's only when you have the real Isur Mitam Atzmoi. A piece of treif meat falling in there. No, kafela cannot taste if it's less than 60. If less than 60, it's usher. Don't use a kafela. But if it's an Isur Balua, like in Tzadik Gimel, that you're cooking milk in a fleshike pot, even the Ramban, even those Shitas who hold that you cannot use a kafela on the 60, here they would agree, because in an Isur Balua, they would be mekel.
But again...
So in my scenario, I wanted to suggest that perhaps,
right, I understand that.
Maybe, since the spice happens to be an Isur Balua in a piece of meat, it's not the real Isur. Mitam Atzmo, it's an Isur Balua. It's called an Isur Balua. I don't have another name for it. Just like an Isur Balua over here with the blood in the salt is called an Isur Balua. An Isur Balua has a different status than an Isur Mitam Atzmo.
With respect to this question,
right?
Does it make sense a blias balua and an balua?
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Because in the case of the milk in the pot, what the milk is absorbing is not the isur. It's absorbing the remnants of the taste of the isur that remained in the pot after the isur itself was already removed.
Right.
So the milk has an absorption of a blia.
But it still has an absorption that can be detected.
Absolutely, you can detect the taste.
Sure.
But it has an absorption of the blia. When we're saying isur balua, we're saying the substance of the isur itself, which is the origin, the source of the taste, itself is balua, not just the taste it left behind. Isur balua means the substance itself is balua. The chaylev is balua in the meat.
The time, you're saying.
No, the chaylev itself was
no, in this case, yeah, but you're saying in the pot, all you have is flavor, is time.
In the pot, what the milk is absorbing is only the flavor that was left behind in the walls, not the substance of the meat that was cooked in that.
Right.
So what I'm asking is, with respect to the kfela...
Yeah, but don't forget that when we talk about isurim getting mixed, sometimes the isurim are nimoichu, as the Lashon is used by the Toyscoop. They're completely disintegrated.
They're fully mixed into it.
Yeah, and it's not, and unless you hold that that's pshat, mamash shel isuroi, all you have is really the tam. You don't have the isur present in reality. Mm-hmm. According to some shitas, maybe you're right. Depending on what the spice was, maybe that's called isura and mamosha shel isura. It's all there, and it's not only the tam. Or it's completely disintegrated, and all I have left is the tam of it.
So that's very interesting. So you're saying
so it could be based on that.
There are shitas that hold that when it's fully disintegrated, it's like the isur was gone, and it only left the tam behind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And therefore, you would need b'chdei achilas pras to be able to absorb or consume, I should say, the entire isur. The entire isur. Remember we spoke about b'chdei achilas pras. So you'd have to eat the whole thing. Otherwise, all you're having is a taste of it. Or you're not having the real isur. But anyway, it's just an idea that I thought of, All right, just to finish up a little bit more.
But the Rambam, what you're referring to, was back to salad.
Yeah.
Where an olive's worth of isur was mixed into the whole salad, but the Rambam says you have to eat the whole salad.
Right.
Because that was your isur.
According to that sheet.
Yeah,
according to that sheet. But according to others, even if you ate a little bit of it, as long as the amount of food was b'chdei achilas.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a different...
That's all. Yeah, sure. All right. Now, before we go on to wine, this halacha of bitul afil be'elef nobato applies obviously to certain things that are very, very powerful in their flavor. As an aside, however, whenever you're talking about isurim derabanan, like pas nochrim, bread that was baked by a goy, bishul nochrim, food that was cooked, certain foods that were cooked by goyim, they will always be batul beroiv, whether it's lach belach, yavish belach, yavish beyavish, regardless. So, just as an aside, those isurim derabanan Not every Isur D'Rabbanan is
These
Batal
particular
B'Raiv.
ones.
These particular ones will be Batal B'Raiv.
and
Pas Nochrim.
Pas Nochrim.
Right. These are situations that will always be Batal B'Raiv. That's what's brought down. Now, let's go over to Yain. Yain is a very fascinating area. Tremendous amount of halachas in Chelik Beis of Yore Deah. A lot of it which is not Shayach today, because we don't have Yain Nesach. A real quick overview of the problems of wine. What's wine? It's all it is grape juice. We have Yain Nesach, and we have Stam Yainam. Yain Nesach, typical Yain Nesach means wine that was offered on the altar for Avodah Zarah. It used to be done in the past, and it's rarely done today. Yain Nesach, as the Ramah brings down, is also afilu b'mashu, even though he doesn't say it here b'mashu, we know it from the other halacha. Yain Nesach is also b'mashu. You can't have hana from it. It's like Avodah Zarah. Okay? What's Stam Yainim? Stam Yainim means today regular wine. Regular wine made by California, whatever, winery. We don't know if it was for Nesach or not. It's called Stam Yainam. Stam Yainam does not have the exact same Isurim today b'zman hazeh as Yain Nesach does. Now, even though in the time of the Gemara they were very much makpid on Stam Yainam as much as Yain Nesach because it's Suffolk, right? But b'zman hazeh we're more lenient. Why are we more lenient b'zman hazeh? In several ways we're more lenient because even those goyim that are oived avodah zarah, what they really do is following the customs of their forefathers. They don't even know what avodah zarah is.
They're not doing it with a bren.
Yeah. So it's not the same as it used to be. So therefore, the same halachas apply to regular wine. I cannot drink it, but I can benefit from it. There's no isur hano the way they used to be in the past.
Really?
The Ramah, at least, only the Ramah. By Sfardim, they're machmir, unless it's made by an Arab. Arab for sure is not a mitzvah. So unless the wine is made by an Arab, they're strict with any wine as far as isur b'hano. When will you have it? You have a shipment. A goy owes you money, says, I don't have any money to pay you off here. Here's some bottles that I just picked up. You want to collect your debt. It's a hefsed. We're makel in that kind of situation. Even as far as it would be makel if you have no other way to collect your debt.
And even if you
Yes.
Arabs?
Yes. Yeah. So that's a question of isur behano. So ordinarily, stam yainam, yain nesach, we're strict about it. The only wine that you can have a goy touch is yain mavushal, because that is not fit to bring the mizbeach.
When the bottle is open.
Obviously, when the bottle is open, if the bottle is not open, it's
Now,
not a
once
problem.
it was poured into a glass, still the same problem?
Yeah, same problem. You can't, the wine is wine. But, so you have to look out for yain mevushal, yain sheinu mevushal, because sometimes this can make a difference, whether the goy can pour it or not.
But because of this. So, if a goy is pouring non-mibble wine, that's
It's a problem.
For you.
It's going to be, you
It's a
can't
problem.
drink it.
You can't drink it.
You cannot drink it.
if a Jew poured it and heater, and now he's bringing it and puts it in front of you.
You cannot touch it.
You cannot.
You cannot touch any wine that is open.
But that's only by a goy.
Right. Or
a-
even by a Jew that is not Shomer Shabbos.
Same
Sometimes
thing?
it can be a problem.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sure. Depending on the situation. So anyway, non-kosher wine cannot be consumed. That we know. It's not always osur behano if it's stam yeinam. But what about bitul? Okay.
Right.
Right.
So would it be better in a public area where you could probably do have non-Shomer Shabbos Jews to avoid serving non-Mevush wine?
Well, that's what they do.
I'll tell you
Sure.
what's
In
happened.
banquets.
At a banquet here,
Yeah.
once someone
That's what the mashgiach is supposed to check out.
Someone brought non-Mevush wine, and I was sitting with someone here at the table,
Right.
and he was about to pour me the wine, and he stopped himself, and he wouldn't touch it for Shabbos.
Yeah.
didn't
Oh,
want
he
to touch
knew. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He didn't want to
That's
touch the
interesting.
wine.
But anyway,
So he
so
was right.
with yain nesach, when do we say there's no bitul? That's b'minoi, because of the chashivas of yain nesach. But be'eino mino, it's still batul b'shishim. Yain nesach, yeah. When do we say it's not batul? B'mino, min b'minoi, like all the other things that we've spoken about that were machmir dafka min b'minoi, because of the chashivas, right? But if it's min be'eno mino, we're back to ta'am.
It's a matter of taste.
It's a matter of taste only, the whole idea of min be'eno mino. So therefore, shisha would apply even to yain nesach. Now,
That is so.
Ramah, according to the Ramah, according to the Ramah, because we're a little bit more lenient with stam yeinam b'zman hazeh, stam yeinam will always be batal b'shishim, even min b'minoi. Okay, so far, everybody follows. Yeah. Now comes a very interesting scenario. All of this beetle business with min b'minoi or min b'she'eno minoi, whether it's shishim or whether it's never bottle, that does not apply if you have water mixed in.
In the wine, you mean?
In the wine.
Isn't all water?
It depends. Once you have water, okay, there's a sheet that holds that the ratio is 1 to 6.
Oh, to be mevatel.
To be mevatel,
Because
not
they
60.
already put in the maximum of the water.
Not 60. Water is such a strong diluter of wine that it's mamash poigem. It's a form of gima to the wine. And at some point, it loses a boyer priagaf and it becomes a shehako. Right? Makes no difference.
Because their wines were much stronger.
Well, obviously, when you have something that's very concentrated, you need a greater amount of water to dilute it. That's true. So anyway, with water, it would help. When you have a situation that grape juice is mixed, non-kosher grape juice is mixed in certain drinks, many kosher organizations will not give any hechsher on any amount of grape juice, even though it's 1 to 6. It's water, orange juice, or whatever. Oh, by the way, not everybody holds shar mashkim. There's a machloikas in that too. Do we say only water? What about if it's other liquids?
Orange juice.
Okay, not everybody is in agreement. But I think Rav Moshe paskins that we are lenient, and we go, I think, based on what the Taz says. I think it's a Taz, that any liquids is fine. It's 1 to 6. It doesn't have to be water per se.
So in other words, after the grape juice was already watered down, so now you only need 6 against the amount of grape juice that was mixed into the... You know what you're saying?
One more time, what?
After the grape juice is no longer the concentrate juice like it comes out of the grape, but it was already watered down, you no longer need 6, you only need 6. Isn't that what you're saying?
No. If this prohibited wine or grape, or whatever it is, got mixed in with water, right?
Against this mixture, you only...
Yes, against the new mixture.
Right, so once the grape juice was watered down...
Okay, yes.
If this grape
diluted.
juice now was used with orange juice, then if you have 6 times the amount of grape juice in the orange juice...
It's permissible. It's permissible, it's bottle. Okay? So if I have a liquid that is 1 to 6 ratio, it would be bottle. If that's the case, then this will help us in various situations. Medication. As you know, I'm not going to come back to the sherry wood. With medication, first of all, you sometimes have things that are milsa david latamo, flavorings that are also. In medication, you have certain things that sheloke derach achilosai. Gelatin, gel caps. Not everybody should take them unless a person really, really is very sick and there's no alternative. It's sheloke derach achilosai, it's not edible, and you don't eat it, you don't chew it, you just swallow it. And we don't always recommend removing the gel cap because you know why it's in the gel cap to begin with. Some medications need to slowly release themselves, so you don't want to always really remove the gel cap. Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. You have to ask the pharmacist. But if somebody should look at derech achilosoi, if somebody's really sick, you can take it. Same thing with tablets. The problem is with the chewable tablets, or the ones that have flavor. Okay, so that every situation has to be looked into. Okay, but wait a minute. With the chewable tablets, the ingredient that's there maybe is bottle. Well, if you can determine that it's bottle, then that's fine, because it's bottle. The problem is if it's milsa davida latama, it's not bottle. Okay? But usually, that's not the problem with tablets. Where is the milsa davida latama a problem? With liquids. Expectorants, how do they call it? For the throat, sore throat, grape flavors. Whenever you have a problem with that, all you need to do, I'm not talking about milsa david latama right now, okay? But in general, you have the iser tam, the iser flavor there. You can mix it with a little bit of water. You can dilute it in enough water to make it bottle b'shishim. Follow me? In the liquid form, you can always dilute it and get rid of the problem.
If it doesn't.
No, they tell you that usually a little bit of water will not make a difference. Yeah. No, not 6. I'm not talking about, with wine, yes, but I'm talking about other isurim.
It's only against the flavor.
With other isurim, remember, it's already diluted in medication. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's already diluted. So all you're going to need is for every teaspoon that you're going to take, you're just going to need to put her in in the amount that will make it batel b'shishim.
Batel b'shishim, the whatever component.
Whatever component it is. In other words, there is a way to dilute the isser, if it's not completely batel. It's already diluted, but it may need a little bit more, so you can put it, and they tell you usually that some of these medication is strong enough, potent enough, that even if you add a little bit of water or juice, they say, or soda, it will still work. So in that case, it wouldn't be a problem. The only problem sometimes you do have is if it's a milsa davida latama. That's when the issue becomes more of a problem. If the whole thing is intended there to give flavor. Mm-hmm. What other problems do you have? You have the problem of mevatlim isur lechatchila. Right? You're not allowed to be mevatel an isur lechatchila. So that B'ezrat Hashem will cover this. I just wanted to introduce you a little bit to some of the issues in medication. Here it's not really isur lechatchila mevatel because they didn't necessarily do it for you. Right? You didn't do it yourself. It was done to begin with. So the issue of bitul of mevatel isur lechatchila doesn't apply here. But anyway, with medication you have certain issues and you have to know how to deal with them. With wine, getting back to wine. With wine or whiskeys, whiskey is usually not a problem if you know how whiskey is made. Beer is usually not a problem. Wines, of course, we know is a problem because you're not allowed to have wine from a goy. So where do we have a problem of wine? You have a problem in the barrels that may contain some wine in the wood. Right?
Yeah.
That's where the problem is. And here you have whiskey that has been sitting in the sherry wood that contains wine. And we're machmir. But we don't always have to be machmir necessarily. Because what are the issues here? The issue is kavush. When something is sitting long enough, over 24 hours, and some of it is sitting days, if not years, right, in a barrel, then it's kavush. Kavush, you need shishim against the entire barrel. In certain situations, I think as the Mechaber points out, you would only need a shishim keneged the klipa. It's a machlokes. The Shach says you need to hold the whole barrel, and some say that you only need keneged the klipa. Either way, you need a certain amount to be mevatel it. So one of the concerns, just a concern, with one of the concerns of having whiskey sitting long enough in these barrels that had wine once upon a time, was the kavush problem.
If there's no...
And the question is if you have enough to be mevatel, so you need a bittul. And is it mevatel isur lechatchila? We still have the problem of bittul isur lechatchila. Right. But it's whiskey. Whiskey? Wait a minute, it's whiskey, yeah. Well, what's wrong? Why not just have it bittul 1 to 6? It's just like water. That is one of the key heterim here. Is whiskey like water or not? Well, what's the question? Because lechora, whiskey will make the wine pogum. Just like water in some ways, and the whiskey will make the wine pogum.
Even in smaller quantities.
Yeah. You don't want to have the flavor. But if that's the case, that the whiskey will make the wine pogum, then why did they put it to begin with? It's obviously because they do want the taste of the wine. Maybe.
Maybe, no. First of all, is it
You see?
Yeah.
You see what's going on?
one of the questions in this shot
Right.
is whether or not taste coming out.
There is.
Or no, I know if it
Right.
says it doesn't happen.
Nothing happens. Now let me explain to you why not. It's not that they want the taste of the wine. They don't want only the taste of the bark of the oak. So if it's sitting in an oak that has been used for wine, then it contributes just a little bit, which is fine. But it's not that you actually will feel the taste of the wine to begin with, which otherwise it would be also a problem of milsa davida letama, right? So it's not really the wine taste, it's just a neutral kind of flavor that is presented. Plus you have, of course, the issue of 1 to 6 ratio because it's like water, right? And you may need it, it's only, according to some, it's only a klipa. So because of the various situations here, some say you don't have to be makpid on it. We're still makpid, of course. A lot of Hashem would not give a hechsher on that because it presents a problem. There are issues. But as you can see, that those issues may not really be serious issues once you realize that the Rabbanan here, the bittul of a klipa, it's not really milsa davida latama, it's really poigem, 1 to 6 ratio. Yes?
That's good, but on your blended whiskeys, sherry, as
Right.
you're blending it,
Right.
to make these come together.
Yeah, you still need a hechsher. You sometimes need a hechsher. You're going to need a hechsher many times because of that. Well, same thing with certain liquors, the various additives. And sometimes those additives are not necessarily bottle. You have to know what the amount is. Because if it's bottle, it's bottle. Some of the stearates it can be a problem. They enhance the flavor, whatever they do, even though in that situation they don't enhance the flavor. They do something else, but you have to know these things, and then those who are in hashgacha are aware of it. You know, what is this ingredient doing? What is it really doing? How much of it is there? And therefore, should we rely on it or not? Did you have a problem, which is the easiest problem to begin with? But these are some of the issues that we have that I wanted to present to you tonight, that you should see that all of these halachas, all of these issues do come into play in present-day hashgacha of commercial foods, wineries, and something as simple as whiskey, which may be a problem because of where it has been sitting, unless you make it because of all the leniency. Just want to finish up with the story that I remember that I told you with the chicken legs. Remember I told you the story with the chicken legs? I think it was Rabbi Elyahu Kin. What happened was that she had 5 chickens, and one of the chickens was treif. They were all cut up, so she put aside the non-kosher chicken to give to the maid. But all of a sudden, when she wanted to go cook her kosher chickens, instead of seeing 8 legs, she's 9 legs. So she knew, after checking the treif chicken, that 1 leg was missing in the treif, that here she has 1 treif leg. So, but she doesn't know which one it is. There's 9 chicken legs. That's the question that was presented to the Rav. And the student, of course, who just got smicha, says, "Oh, it's all suffix taaruvot, it's all treif." And the rabbi all of a sudden started separating the legs. He put 5 on one side and 4 on the other side. He says the 5 are treif, the 4 are kosher. And the student was amazed. How did you figure out that? He says, because there's a way to tell a right leg from a left leg, right? And I saw,
Since the leg named with the treif.
I saw 5 right legs.
5 right legs.
I saw 5 right legs.
Very good.
So the 5 right legs is treif, but the 4 left legs, let her have some chicken soup.
Very good.
So that's, so you have to know to distinguish between the right leg.
No, what the real chokhmah was, he didn't even have to look at whether a left or a right leg was left with the treifed chicken. He would simply go by the number of legs.
Just by the numbers, because obviously that was the situation. So anyway, Mitzvah Hashem will continue next week.